ACC, Pac-12, Big Ten is going to have a football alliance. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means, a consortium to keep their conferences pure, which would spell some more instability for West Virginia.
Right.
Because I think what they would probably do is either not expand or agree to only expand within themselves. So then what you would see is probably the Big Ten getting cannibalized, half going to the Pac-12, half going to the ACC. I could see that happening if that's part of their agreement, because it would almost split them down the middle of the country.
Yeah.
It looks like the Big 12 is just kind of hanging out there, waiting to see what happens. And to me, I know a lot of fans are, hellbound on them getting in the ACC. And the truth of it is if the ACC wanted West Virginia, it would already be happening.
Right.
Clemson, if you read what Clemson has to say, Clemson's dead set against West Virginia coming into the ACC.
Right.
They're stating, and I do agree with it. What West Virginia is a mid-tier team. There's no way around that. Doesn't matter how you look at it. Even if you look at it as the 15th most winning program in the country, that's still a mid-tier team. And basically, they don't want another mouth to feed, and that's the way they've put it.
Yeah.
So, keeping Clemson in the ACC when these big three come to make some sort of an alliance, I have a feeling West Virginia is going to be on the outside looking in to the ACC because of that.
Right. And, where do you think, in that retrospect, do you think West Virginia would wind up maybe possibly in the SEC? With this new realignment, because I don't foresee us going to the Pac-12. I mean, I don't think that would be very beneficial to West Virginia nor for its fan base, but in terms of travel and analytics, as you like to say. But I don't foresee that being an issue. But, I mean, would it be SEC?
I think what you would see if they do make a consortium and they make an agreement where they're not going to pull in other teams, I think what you'll see is a panic from the SEC, because what the SEC is trying to do is basically corner the market on top tier teams, which would leave Clemson out, Florida State out, Ohio State out. The Pac-12, I don't really look at them except, if you want to get into the discussion of Oregon being part of that consortium where Oregon is so closely tied to Nike, you're talking about possible redistribution of wealth from Nike. I don't know. But I think what you could see happen is if they do come to an agreement, you could see the SEC say, well, we're going to go ahead and pull in the rest of the Big 12, which would include West Virginia. We're going to go after a few AAC teams, which would be probably Cincinnati, possibly Memphis. They would probably extend the invitations to Notre Dame, BYU, Army, and Navy.
Yeah.
And pull in some of the independents. So I think that's that, I'm no analyst and I'm no insider, but I can look at things objectively. And I think whatever the ACC and the Big Ten, the Pac-12 are getting ready to do is going to shape the landscape for what happens to West Virginia.
Right.
And that could lead to the SEC. It could also lead to, not being in a Power 5 conference as well.
Yep. It could be you could be left in a revamped Big 12 conference, or at worst, not to throw shade on any conference by no means, the American Athletic Conference, we could wind up going there. And, we've talked about this privately. That would be probably the kiss of death in terms of West Virginia football.
So I think the SEC is going to wait and see what happens with this consortium or whatever you want to call it. And then they'll act accordingly. Because at the end of the day, I don't care what any Mountaineer fan says, you want to be in the SEC. That's it.
Yeah.
The SEC is where the big boys play. I want to play Alabama every year, or every couple of years. Alabama, Auburn,
Georgia.
Georgia. I mean, give us those teams. We'd be playing Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina. It would just be, to me, that would be ideal. I want to see the Mountaineers compete against the best out there.
Better.
And the ACC, no matter how much you love Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech and the rivalries that they've had in the past, that's not the best move for West Virginia. That's a regression. And people can argue that all they want, but simplified, it is a simple regression. It really is. You're going back into the Big East, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and to me, I think not only would it help with the SEC, we would get a big boost in recruiting just because we have the SEC logo. As much of a dumpster fire as Tennessee's in right now, they still been pulling in top 25, top 15 recruiting classes, with multiple coaches. So it's that logo, it's that brand that if you go to the SEC, chances are better that you're going to make it to the league.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you kill the SEC. I don't know that it's possible. Some things are too strong to fail, and not everybody agrees with that. But I mean, look at what the history of the SEC over the last 20 years. You'll clearly see it.
It's grown. It's become a monster.
But if the ACC and the Big Ten and the Pac-12, pile in together, the SEC will have to do something. Mm-hmm. They really will.
I mean, realistically, we've heard for years. We've heard about the four super conferences. We've heard that talk for years, and how it was eventually going to come to four super conferences: an Eastern Super Conference, the Southern, the Midwest, and the Western Super Conference. And we've always heard that's where you're going to get your champions of the super conferences that's going to meet for the 14 playoffs, and that's where you're going to get your playoffs and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fine with me. The truth of it is, again, unpopular opinion, I'm just hounding on that tonight. A lot of people look at the Final Four for the last few years and they think they find fault with it. But you really don't. Teams like Cincinnati, Central Florida, when you go undefeated playing sub-tier teams, you don't deserve a shot. That's the thing with West Virginia. Like West Virginia being in the Big 12, they come out of the Big 12 with one loss or undefeated, then they deserve a shot. Same with Oklahoma, any team in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. That's just the fact of it. But if you have a conference like the Big 12 where each team has 2 and 3 losses, and you've got the SEC where you've got several teams with one loss, of course they deserve it more, and that's just the truth of it. You may not agree with that, but it's the truth of it. It really is.
I was one of those ones. It's like when the SEC got those 2 teams in, one Georgia and Alabama went in, I was like, what the hell? This is stupid. Wasn't the playoff, wasn't designed about it. But then I got back and I thought about it analytically. That year that Georgia and Alabama got in, they were literally 2 of the 4 best teams in the country, and that you couldn't really knock one without the other. And they were so close, and they had a heck of a, Georgia become one play away from winning the SEC championship. Then they almost won in overtime when they beat Alabama that year. They should have beat Alabama twice, but they ended up choking both times.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last thing I'm going to say about the whole SEC thing, because we could go on and on for hours going over what ifs. Mm-hmm. The thing that's made me laugh the most, though, is the fact that Texas runs away from the Big 12 to join the SEC.
I don't understand that.
I don't understand it because the SEC isn't going to kiss their ass the way the Big 12 did.
No.
Texas hasn't done anything for a little bit, and they're not close to doing anything. I think the Texas
football team.
Yep, you're exactly right. And the Texas fan base is going to be so disappointed for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that makes me giggle inside just a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, they brought in Steve Sarkisian. Yeah, I mean, that's cool. I mean, he's an offensive minded coach. I mean, they might put up a lot of points, but when it comes down to it, are they going to beat Oklahoma? I don't see it. Are they going to beat Oklahoma State? Yeah, maybe. Will they beat Iowa State? I don't know. I doubt it. I kind of doubt it. Will they beat us? I mean, that's, there's realistically, you could look at, there's 4 teams that could realistically beat Texas this year. I mean, and when they would, when they go to the SEC, I mean, depending on which side of the bracket they end up in, I mean, that could, very, very well be, them playing Alabama every year, them playing Auburn every year, and LSU. I mean, they could be, a bottom feeder in the Western Division if they would have to play Alabama every year, LSU every year, Ole Miss. I mean, these are logically teams that could literally kick the shit out of Texas every year.
Yeah, I agree. To me, the only thing that made sense was Oklahoma going into the SEC
because they're a step above everybody in the conference.
That's right. Nobody's proven over the past 4 or 5 years that they can beat Oklahoma on a regular basis, or that they can take that next step to get on par with Oklahoma. Why would they stay? I mean, it makes sense for them to go to the SEC. The truth of it is the ACC and the Big Ten and the Pac-12 getting together could be a monkey wrench in the plans. And, West Virginia I think West Virginia will benefit from it.
Yeah.
Whether it be a spot in the ACC or a spot in the SEC, I think either way, it's gonna benefit West Virginia. I know people are gonna shit all over me. They're gonna be like, "Oh, West Virginia don't belong in the SEC." Well, I mean,
why not?
They're as good or better than half the teams in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're a mid-tier team, they're going to be a mid-tier team, whether they're in the Big 12, the Big 10, the Pac-10, the ACC, or the SEC. They're going to be a mid-tier team because that's just who they are. And every 8 to 10 years, they're going to build a team that's going to actually compete for, a shot at the national championship. And just like every other time it's ever happened, they're going to let us down because that's just who they are.
Happens.
And that's okay. That's okay. That's the perils of being a West Virginia fan. And everybody out there, you're going to shit on me, but it's the truth. It's the truth. That's just the way it is.
But in 88, it happened in 93 and in 07.
I mean, it's just the way it is, like 10 years apart, 12 years apart. Like, it's just the way it is. And, maybe
close to that time again where it happens.
That's right. And what you have to hope is that you have the coach
this time
that can get you over that hump.
Yeah.
What would Neil Brown have done with that Major Harris team? What would Neil Brown have done? What would Neil Brown have done with that Pat White team? And then that's what you got to look at is, is Neil Brown a better coach than Rich Rodriguez? Maybe not. Is he better than, who is he better than? And we're still learning a lot about our coach. And I think we're going to learn that he's probably the best talent coach-wise we've probably ever had at West Virginia. Love you, Don Nehlen, but it's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Don Nehlen's, it seems like every article I read or every picture I see on Neil Brown's Twitter, that Don Nehlen's always around practice. He's always standing with Coach Brown, and he's always with Don Nehlen. Does that tell you, if that don't tell you something about Neil Brown's character? I want to thank you guys for watching tonight's broadcast. We really want to, hopefully, we entertained you, and I think we did for tonight's broadcast. But if you have any questions, concerns, comments, make sure you leave those below. And not to mention, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button right here on Geek Gorilla TV, right here on YouTube, and also make sure you like and smash that like button. We would certainly love a subscribe too. So. This has been Marcus Dean and my co-host Sam with the Mountaineer Effect. Let's go, Mountaineers.
Very good, Si.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Pretty good.
Well, I mean, there's nothing that I'm going to get shit on for some of the things that I said, but it's the truth. It is the truth. I mean, let's see.